Next question. In your own observation, what do you think is the main issue in relation to poor session results based on the following? Poor device connection, water ratio and water source, device accessories, and sweat triggers?
Okay, great question. I'm going to kind of boil that down into really like why maybe patients didn't see results with previous iontophoresis treatments. And there's a lot of different factors like we've kind of already touched on. First, let's kind of talk about the technology, because even though the science of iontophoresis kind of behind the scenes remains similar, the technology can be drastically different. Going back to what I had said in that first one, number one, make sure you're using a direct current machine, or at least have a machine with a direct current option. A lot of patients that we've encountered in the past who did not see a significant improvement with iontophoresis or had a negative experience, it was usually a pulsed current machine. The difference, if you can think about, even just turning on a light switch, okay? A direct current is a constant delivery of that current, the milliamperes and the natural minerals, into the sweat pores for the duration of that 20-minute period, okay? A pulsed current turns the current on and off, okay? So that at any point during the treatment, a patient may sometimes reach higher levels, but it's just going and waving on and off. It's not consistent enough to be as effective as direct current. The rationale behind this is that a pulsed current creates a more comfortable experience for the patient, which it definitely can. And that's why our Fischer features both a direct current and a pulsed current switch. So you have the option. But that would probably be the first place to start. If you're not happy with your iontophoresis sessions, check to see what mode you're treating on for the current, or if you don't have the switch option, check to see what type of current model you have. All right. So that would be number one. Number two, let's talk about the water. Most patients think you have to add a ton of water to these trays, but you really don't. It's roughly 2 to 5 cups that you'll add to each of the trays, but you don't really have to measure it out. Like here, this is the cup that I use for tutorials here. All right, so I would just add this, and as long as you get the blue foam pieces in the trays nice and damp, that's really all of the water that you need to add, okay? With our Fischer, even if you ever didn't add enough water, it won't start because there's not enough connectivity to complete that circuit. Okay, so that's the first thing to keep in mind. Another element of the water, if you're not seeing good results, we've had some patients who said, oh, I've been using very cold water for the treatments. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? No, it's the opposite, in fact. By using warmer water in the water bath trays, it helps to stimulate the capillaries, which is going to reduce the body's resistance and can help the treatment be more effective. So check the temperature of the water if you're not happy with your results. Go into the water again. Mineral concentration, I think someone had brought that up, right, in those questions. So iontophoresis does rely on the natural minerals found in tap water, like calcium, potassium, magnesium, to name a few. And if you happen to live in what's called a soft water area, or maybe you're using a filtered water source, they often filter out those minerals that are required. And why are those minerals required for the treatment? If you could think of, let's say, the skin, it's a sponge, right? And you've got all these holes where there's just sweat just seeping out of all the time. What the device is doing is it's sending a mild electrical current into these water bath trays so the current delivers the natural minerals into those holes, essentially plugging them up and creating this all-natural dryness barrier. So there's nothing invasive about it. There's no chemicals going into the body. If you haven't had success with iontophoresis in the past, look at what the water source is. You may want to try to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda to each of the trays. This can help to balance the pH levels, which can help some patients either see results to begin with, or even some patients who are like, hey, I'm 70% dry, but it'd be great to be 100%. Making that slight change often helps. But even nowadays, there's other options, bottled mineral waters. Some patients have even used like drops that you can pick up that are mineral boosters with electrolytes, calcium, potassium, and some of those, elements that we had discussed before. So make sure you've got mineral dense water that you're using for these treatments. Another reason why patients may not have seen success with iontophoresis in the past, some of those levels that we've already started talking about, right? So with the precise milliampere control, you really have to figure out the level that works best for you. And what you want to be experiencing and how you can tell you're at the right level is a tingling sensation, as if your hands or feet were starting to fall asleep. I think sometimes patients will go online and look for what other patients were treating at, right? And they'll just use that kind of as a guideline. But while peer groups are definitely helpful and to have that support, it's important. Not all iontophoresis is the same for every patient, right? So what worked for one may not work for you. And don't get discouraged if you happen to be treating on a lower milliampere level. That could be the reason why you weren't seeing results. From my experience, if you're looking for kind of a broad range where you could try to get to, most patients treating their hands are in like the 10 to 12 milliampere mode. Most patients treating feet are in the 12 to 14. But I've definitely had patients who are treating higher than that. I've had them treating in the 20s regularly. Our device goes up to 30 milliampere, regardless of the area being treated, which is interesting because that's another thing to look at. Sometimes patients, when they make their decision to go with maybe a different machine, they don't look at the details, because sometimes those other machines, when they say they're a 25 milliampere and a 55 volt machine, when you look at the details, it actually only goes up to 8 milliampere when you're treating your underarms with, say, axillary attachments like we have here. And it only goes up to 15 milliampere for the hands. And it only reaches like 45 volts. And it's only when you're treating your feet do some of those levels actually become true. So again, be careful, and when you're doing your research, look at the details and make sure that you're going with a device that has a lot of flexibility in it, okay, but is also very dependable in terms of the voltage, the milliampere levels, even going into making sure it plugs into the wall versus some of the battery operated options that you used to see years ago. So I think all encompassing, those would be my top, 3 to 4 reasons why someone, may not have had success with Ionto in the past, but still can.